Aristotle takes political community as natural, as mango seed growing as tree. Man becomes part of political community. Both are natural. It is evident that police belongs to the class of things that exist by nature. That man is by nature a political animal. But what is meant by political reasoning, freedom seeking, decision making, social, belonging to a bigger group, all that is political. And he who is without a police, by reason of his own nature and not of some accident, is either a poor sort of being or being a higher than man. Man by nature is political, and who is not is less than or more than. And Aristotle looks the end as the natural. For example, tree is natural for it to become from the seed. Tree is created by nature. He says, if the art of shipbuilding were in the wood, instead of being in the artist, it would act like nature. Hence, if art proceeds to some end, so does nature. So, shipbuilding is made by man, but tree by nature. But what is common is that they both proceed towards an end. And they seek, man seeks a state. Aim of the state is to be good. A state exists for the sake of good life and not for the sake of life only. If life only were the object, slaves and brute animals might form a state, but they cannot, for they have no share in the happiness or in the life of a free choice. So, out of man's search for freedom, state being formed. Every state is a community of some good, but every community is established with a view to some good. For mankind always acts in order to obtain that which they think good. But of all the communities aim at some good, the state or political community, which is the highest of all and which embraces all the rest, aims at a good in a greater degree than any other and at the highest good. Okay. And state can be described in terms of its constitution. Constitution of a state is in sense the way it lives. When the constitution undergoes a change in form and becomes a different constitution, the city will likewise cease to be the same city. We say that a chorus which appears at one time as a comic and as another as a tragic chorus is not the same, and this in spite of the fact that the members often remain the same. Okay, so how people are organized is indicated in constitution. Like mango seed becomes mango tree and a neem seed becomes neem tree. Constitution leads the people in a particular way. So, like you see different seeds, you can see different constitutions. Which means different states and so different directions of growth for the group. And Aristotle collected these constitutions. Okay. Constitutions are of 6 types. 1, monarchy, that is where ruler is one. Aristocracy, where rulers are many, and polity. People rule. 2, 3. And in each form, Aristotle says there is equivalent of, there is something good and something bad. When the ruler is one, monarchy is a good form where ruler is a philosopher king. And a bad form is tyranny. Bad form corresponding to aristocracy is oligarchy. Bad form corresponding to polity is democracy. So Aristotle's word for people ruling in a bad way is democracy, and in a good way it is polity. So the word democracy is being used in a negative sense by Aristotle. Okay. The same way Plato also used. Why is it so? Why is ideal is monarchy and ruled by a philosopher king? Because Plato and Aristotle believe that the political system should be led by wisdom. So monarchy under a philosopher king is led by wisdom. And what happens when people rule? Then opinions become important and not truth. What happens when oligarchs rule? oligarchs are rich people. So they are good at wealth, making money. So if they are good at wealth, it doesn't mean they are good at ruling, good at reasoning. So the oligarch's claim to good rule is not valid. Aristotle says something that if they are superior in one point, for example in wealth, they are superior in all. This is wrong, according to Aristotle. And democracy goes by arithmetic justice. They believe that if they are equal in one respect, for instance in free birth, they are equal all around. That all are good in ruling because they are equal in free birth. This is wrong. So a good system is the one which is led by wisdom. And so Aristotle tries to find what can be a good form, okay, given these variations. Okay, Aristotle collected 158 constitutions. Okay. How does Aristotle identify something good? Number one, he doesn't go by logic and rational and ideal. Instead, he goes by empirical and what is available. Plato goes by ideals, but Aristotle goes by empirical. Plato dreams and proposes an idea. Aristotle chooses among what is available. Aristotle improves. Okay. And Aristotle's method of finding out what is a virtue is something in between vices. Virtue is some in between two vices. And he does the same thing for the constitution also. So he says a good political system is a combination of oligarchy and democracy between two bad forms. And by that he meant democracy but law, which he calls polity. So what is the significance of law? He who bids the law rule may be deemed to bid God and reason alone rule, but he who bids man rule adds an element of the beast, for desire is a wild beast, and passion perverts the minds of our rulers, even when they are the best of men. The law is reason unaffected by the desire. So, to Aristotle, going by law is a better option, because even if a person is good, he may go by impulse, but if he is going by law, then he will go by reason. So that is Aristotle's argument. This is in contrast to Plato, who once argued that a wise ruler should not be constrained by laws. But Plato himself changed later. in his later works. So, oligarchy plus democracy, which meant popular rule but law. This is called mixed constitution. Mixed constitution. Okay. He arrives at the mixed in the same way he arrives at anything virtuous. Number one, he says, we should never seek the ideal. We have now to consider what is the best constitution and the best way of life for the majority of cities and the majority of mankind. In doing so, we shall not employ a standard of excellence above the reach of ordinary people, or a standard of education requiring exceptional natural endowments and equipment, or the standard of constitution which attains an ideal level. We shall be concerned only with the sort of life which most people are able to share and sort of constitutions which it is possible for most cities to enjoy. Rejecting Plato's idealism. And what is the preferred form? Both oligarchy and democracy may be tolerable forms of government, even though they deviate from the ideal. But if you push either of the further still in the direction to which it tends, you will begin by making it a worse constitution, and you will end up turning it into something which is not a constitution at all. The nearest to the best must always be better, and the one farthest removed from the mean must always be worse. Okay. And polity, which is a mixed form of democracy and aristocracy, or oligarchy, calls for middle classes. Why is it so? In a democracy, poor people are there. In a democracy, the poor. The poor go by their own class interests. And oligarchy the rich by their own interests. So Aristotle wants the mean. Okay. Not simply the rich, not simply the poor. And so Aristotle prefers the mean constitution will work well when there are enough number of people who are not so rich but not poor, who are middle classes. So Aristotle's theory of mean identifies the role of middle classes in having polity. Okay. So it says, it is therefore the greatest of blessings for a city that its members should possess a moderate and adequate property, where some have great positions and others have nothing at all. The result is either an extreme democracy or an unmixed oligarchy, or it may even be a result of the excesses of both sides, a tyranny. Okay. A city aims at being as far as possible composed of equals and pairs, which is the condition of those in the middle, more than any other group. It follows that this kind of city is bound to have the best constitution, since it is composed of the elements which, in our view, naturally go to make up the city. So, more number of middle classes is a way to avoid class conflict. Class conflict comes when the power is with the rich. okay, or completely with the poor. Okay. In fact, attempt to give power to the poor is communism that was tried. So, Aristotle wants to avoid this class conflict. Okay, and this class conflict is also not conducive to good constitution. So what is conducive to good constitution is, and what is conducive to, or demography that is conducive to good political system is sufficient number of middle classes. And Aristotle's observation on the importance of middle classes for the stability of political system is vindicated by history. Extreme inequalities constitute ground for revolution. And if you go by the rule of the poor, then there may not be progress. Okay. So, that is how Aristotle looked at things. But what are the limitations in thinking in terms of mean test? For everything, Aristotle is thinking in terms of mean. Oligarchy and democracy, quality. Rich and poor, middle classes. Okay. So Aristotle thinks in terms of an available alternative that is empirically existing. So there is nothing wrong, but the problem is this leads to very conservative thinking, because a thinker is not seeing the possibilities. He's not seeing the possibilities. A seed is giving rise to these trees, tree 1, tree 2, tree 3. But maybe under completely different set of conditions, very huge tree is possible, large one and huge one is possible. So Aristotle is missing the possibility of this tree. Okay. So that is a problem with conservative thinking. Okay. There may be an improvement to the seeds, and there may be improvement to the conditions under which taller trees are possible. Okay. And the same thing can be applied to the political systems also. Aristotle rejected the ideal that Plato wanted, that was communism of family. Okay. So Aristotle rejects communism of family. Many people reject it, but his conservatism is so bad that Aristotle ends up supporting slavery and inferior position of women. Okay. So let us look at this. Aristotle rejects not any unreasonable. This is not unreasonable. This is Plato's idealism. What is common to the greatest number gets the least amount of care. People may pay most attention to what is their own. They care less for what is common. People are more prone to neglect their duty when they think that another is attending to it. Just as a little Just as a little sweet wine mixed with a great deal of water produces a tasteless mixture, so family feeling is diluted and tasteless when family names have as little meaning as they have in constitution of this sort. And when there is so little reason for father treating his sons as sons or a son treating his father as a father, or brothers one another as brothers. So Plato commits an extreme idealism, and Aristotle mm, rejects, and that is good. Okay. So Aristotle's empiricism corrects Plato's idealism, but Aristotle's conservatism sometimes misses very important possibilities. For example, Aristotle's ideas on woman, he took woman as inferior. We should look upon the female state as being, as it were, a deformity, though one which occurs in the ordinary course of nature. How can what occurs as an ordinary course of nature be a deformity? So this shows patriarchal mindset. What is surprising here is that Spartan women were taking part in war. So nearby Athens, there was a society which actually won the war against Athens, and the society was giving importance to women. And Aristotle doesn't take that into consideration. And Plato thought women could be rulers. Aristotle is not taking that into consideration. Says further, a male is a male in virtue of a particular ability, and a female in virtue of a particular ability. So, highly prejudiced against women. And then, his attitude towards slavery also is similar. He held slaves as inferior people. How all men who differ from others as much as the body differs from the soul are an animal from man, and in this case with all whose function is bodily service, and who produce best when they supply such service, all such are by nature slaves. And the slave is entirely without the faculty of deliberation. The female indeed possesses it, but in a form which lacks authority, and children also possess it, but only in an immature form. Slave is without the faculty of deliberation. Aristotle was making these observations when slaves are the people who were defeated in war. In fact, at one time there was fear that Athenians also would be taken as slaves, but it did not happen. So under certain circumstances, these philosophers would have been slaves. It may be true, some people by nature are not willing to reason and they are slaves. Okay, but Aristotle is not saying Aristotle should have said that, it would have made sense. But Aristotle is not making it clear that the slaves who are working as slaves are inferior people, which cannot be justified. Okay. So he found slavery, he justified it. He found patriarchy, he justified it. He didn't see the possible alternatives and possible ways of better life. Because to him, virtue is what you can find in an empirical situation as a mean between the vices. So Aristotle's empiricism in this way misses identifying certain possibilities. In fact, misses certain alternatives existing nearby. This is one very serious limitation of Aristotle's thought.